Hey, what's up? This is Chosen, and this video is going to be the top 10 uncommons for early game free-to-play progression, and let's get into it. Alrighty, so I probably should have done this video a while ago. I get asked a lot on stream and stuff, what are the best, early game free-to-play friendly champions, and here we go. That's what this video is going to be about. Now, worth noting before we dive into it that these aren't uncommons, so we're not talking like god tier level abilities or anything, and most of them are not going to be viable in terms of end game content. This is going to be more designed for your first few weeks, first couple of months of playing the game. So uncommons that are pretty easy to build up and max out. A cool thing about uncommons is you can actually get them very easily from mystery shards, especially if you're looking for one. You're going to find it pretty easily in mysteries. You can also get them in the market. So like, let's say I'm building up a vigilante, which you probably wouldn't do, but vigilante, you can look for them in the shop. If you already have one, you can buy one and upgrade its skills with this, so you don't have to use like rare skill books. So it's kind of a free-to-play friendly way to acquire a bunch of them and get their skills maxed out instead of having to use books to do so. You can actually use duplicate champions that you find from cheap mystery shards or for silver in the shop to max out their skills, which makes them have a lot more utility when you are a very brand new player. So before I dive into number 10, there's a couple honorable mentions I want to go over because they have AoE A1s, which I think is very cool. So we've got a very famous one in Saurus. Saurus has been kind of covered extensively because if you get him in insane gear, he can be an endgame 6-second campaign farmer because all of his abilities are AoE. His A1 is attack all enemies. His A2 is attack all enemies. He doesn't have a ton of utility, and he's got a pretty low base speed of 83. But with insane gear, because he's all AoE, he can be a pretty good 12-3 brutal campaign farmer with insane gear. And if you get him in good gear, he can crank out some damage and be okay. So he comes in there at the AoE A1 list. And then we've also got in the Sacred Order the Force Affinity Sister Militant as a common, not even an uncommon. And she's actually got one ability, and it's just attack all enemies. So her and Saurus didn't make the list as like a top 10 for an uncommon that would have a ton of utility, but Saurus is pretty good, and you could argue he should be on the list. Saurus is probably worth building, especially to help you out in Lizardman faction wars if you're a new player who doesn't spend a ton of money. Probably build yourself a Saurus, maybe not a Sister Militant, I mean debatable, but she does at least have the AoE A1 that you can do some fun things with. Alright, let's dive into number 10, and we're going to go into the Bannerlords, the Support Commander. And I wanted to get a healer on the list. We've got a base speed of 101, which is very good for an uncommon. Then we've got an A1 that we can book to a 25% chance to place a stun. That's very good for an uncommon's A1. Then we've got an A2 that heals the target ally with the lowest HP by 40% of this champion's HP. That's the better version of the heal. Instead of it being heals by 40% of their HP, you want it to be this champion's HP, because that means we can stack HP on commander and make that heal be a lot bigger no matter who it's healing. So even if it heals like a damage dealer that doesn't have a lot of attack, we're getting 40% of this champion's HP. We stack HP on them and get a pretty decent heal. Completely fills the target's turn meter if the ally is fully healed. This champion's turn meter cannot be filled by this skill. So pretty good general utility on this champion with stuns and heals and good base speed and turn meter. Pretty solid for an uncommon, and coming in at number 10. For number 9, we're going to go over the Attack Magic Affinity Lizardman Skinner, because I wanted to talk about a couple different things. We've got a 3-hit A1, which is pretty cool for an uncommon. A lot of new players are going to struggle with the Fire Knight. You have to hit the Fire Knight multiple times while he has a shield up, so you can break that shield as quick as possible. It's based on how many attacks and not how much damage you do. So you need champions that have multi-hitter A1s if you want to be able to progress early game in the Fire Knight and be able to rip down that shield so you can actually damage the Fire Knight and place debuffs on him and all that. So can be a good champion to help you out to progress past those early stages of the Fire Knight. Then we've also got an ability that will be very good in a couple of the potion keeps, like the Magic Keep and the Spirit Keep, where we have to remove buffs from them. So we're going to remove 2 buffs from the target on a 3-turn cooldown. So Skinner having some dungeon utility in certain areas, and I wanted to at least include him so I could talk about that. Now for number 8, I'm going to go into the Sacred Order and talk about Crusader. Now, when I was taking my notes to get ready for this video, I actually noticed something kind of interesting. I don't know if this was intentional or if this was like an oversight by the development team, but they basically have twin brothers in the same faction, doing the same exact abilities. Crusader has an A1 that attacks one enemy 2 times. Sergeant has an A1 that attacks one enemy 2 times. They're both based on attack, and they just have 4 upgrades of 5% damage. Based on attack, 4 upgrades of 5% damage. A2, attack one enemy with a random ally, and they use their default skill, and our books go 5, 5, 10, 10, 1. Attack one enemy with a random ally, they use their default skill, 5, 5, 10, 10, 1. They're the same champion in terms of abilities. The only difference is Crusader has 57 crit damage instead of 50, but they both have the same base speed of 92. You can see the 57 instead of 50. And Crusader has a slightly higher base attack. So I'm going to put Crusader on the list at number 8, but it's definitely something kind of interesting I came across in terms of 2 carbon copy champions. Essentially they are slightly different, but they're basically exactly the same in the same faction, same affinity and everything. So just something kind of funny I noticed. And for number 7, we're gonna go into the undead hordes and talk about Dead Crusader. Base speed of 100 is very good for an uncommon. We've got an A1 that's based on defense. I love abilities that are based on defense or HP because we can scale both our toughness and our damage at the same time. Attack champions cannot do that. They have to choose between damage or toughness. Defense and HP champions can scale both at the same time. So it's a kind of lame A1, but it's based on defense, and that's cool. But that's not why he's a good uncommon. He's got a 3-turn AoE that we can get to a 100% chance of placing AoE poison, and it's based on defense, which is great. Now, it is the small version. It's a 2.5% poison instead of a 5, but he's an uncommon, so, you know, we can't expect these abilities to be godly endgame viable. So, very good AoE, 100% chance to place, as long as you have decent accuracy. AoE poison based on defense on a 3-turn cooldown is pretty good, and Dead Crusader comes in at number 7. For number 6, we're going to go into the Orcs and talk about Warcaster. We've got an A1 that has a 20% chance that we can book to 30 for applying a stun debuff based on HP, and I just talked about why that is really cool. And then we've got an A2 that we can book to a 3-turn AoE that has a chance to place both decrease attack and provoke. That's very strong. 2 very good debuffs for dungeon waves and faction wars and all that stuff. Decrease attack and provoke can really help you keep people alive and really deal with CCing the enemy. So a 3-turn cooldown that places very good debuffs, and an A1 with a 30% chance to stun based on HP. War Chanter is very good for an uncommon. At number 4, I'm going to talk about Outlaw Monk. Now, this is a champion that back when I started playing, I wish I would have knew about. He's very good in terms of early game clan boss because of the A2 that places 2 5% poisons on the clan boss for 2 turns, and an A1 that can help him cycle through and get that up more often to get more turns in during a clan boss fight. Now, you're probably only going to use this guy in a clan boss scenario. That ability is not going to be super good in the early game. Your poisons aren't going to tick very hard when you're facing, you know, low levels of stuff. But against the clan boss, it's very good. You need poisons, and if you're a new player or free to play, you're not going to have a lot of options in terms of good poisoners for the clan boss. So definitely get at least one of these guys to 5-star if you're a new player. There's no shame in that because down the road, you have better champions. You can use your Outlaw Monk to 6-star somebody else. That's what I did. I used the Outlaw Monk for a few weeks, and then I used him to 6-star somebody else, and I was really out nothing. So definitely build yourself one of these. I've even seen a couple people, not a couple people, I've even seen a few people build 2 of them in terms of having a bunch of early game poisons, and that is viable. I probably wouldn't 6-star 2 of them, though. I would take them up to 5-star, maybe, and you can even get some decent value out of 4-star Outlaw Monks if you're a new player. You just need them to place those poisons. And while I'm on the subject, even though he didn't make the list, I want to go into Ogre and Tribes and talk about Brute, because Brute has an A1 that is going to place poison, which is very good. It's going to be consistent placing those poisons. You bring a Brute and an Outlaw Monk into a clan boss as an early game player. You can stack those poisons on the clan boss and at least be decent early game against the clan boss. They're going to get replaced eventually, but for your first few weeks, maybe even first month or 2, using a Brute or an Outlaw Monk can be pretty good in a clan boss scenario. And then for number 3, we're going to go in the Barbarians and go over Zephyr Sniper. Base speed of 100, very good. And then we've got an AoE A1, but this has a lot more utility than a Saurus or a Sister Militant because it's based on defense. You know I like that, with a 15% chance that we can book up to 30 and of increasing the cooldown of a random skill on each target by 1 turn. That's very good in terms of dungeon CC. And then we've also got some heals. It's not great, it's 7.5 for 2 turns, but support as a new player is going to be hard to come by. And she's got an AoE based on defense that increases cooldowns while also applying some heals for your team. So she's a very good uncommon. Number 2 is actually also in the Barbarians, and that's going to be Shieldguard. Now, Shieldguard is very cool. Got an A1 that has a 30% chance of placing a 15% decreased speed debuff for 2 turns. Damage is inflicted based on defense, and that's really good. And Shieldguard's A2 is very cool. We've got an AoE on that we can book to a 2-turn cooldown. That's very fun. Fills the champion's turn meter by 20% on each critical hit. Wow, you get this guy in good crit, he can really crank out the AoE turns. Damage inflicted to defense, that's awesome. I love that. That's probably one of the coolest cooldown skills for an uncommon. Then we've got a passive that removes a debuff from this champion each turn. How cool is that? Doesn't even need the passive to be good in terms of uncommon, but you're definitely going to want to build one of these guys for your early game Barbarians Faction Wars to kind of help you, and he can be good for dungeon progression as well. So coming in at number 2 for Shieldguard. And number 1 on the list for the top uncommons is going to be Armiger. I love this guy. One of my friends, Cold Brew, I think kind of made him famous and did a super funny video about doing some cool stuff in the Spider Dungeon with Armiger. And I've seen some really endgame players use Armiger in their Fire Knight team. Armiger's got an A1 that decreases the turn meter by 30% if critical, and he's based on defense, which is very cool. Then we've got the A2, where damage inflicted his damage is affected by defense and enemy max HP, which is very cool. So it's similar to like a Cold Heart or a Royal Guard, which are tougher champions to get. Cold Heart being a Void Rare, Royal Guard being a Magic Affinity Epic. So he's got the enemy max HP scaling on an uncommon champion, and we can book it to a 2-turn cooldown. And he also lowers turn meter, and he's also based on defense. So you get this guy in a scenario against the Fire Knight where the shield is down, he's going to be decreasing the turn meter and hitting based on enemy max HP and being based on defense. So also Spirit Affinity in the last stage of the Fire Knight is going to be Force, so he counters the last affinity of the Fire Knight. So I've seen some endgame utility for Armiger, and he's got some very cool stuff going on here, and that's why he comes in at number 1 for my top 10 uncommons list. All right, that's going to do it for my video for top 10 uncommons, with a few honorable mentions in there thrown in to kind of help some early game free to play or kind of low spenders kind of get an idea of some decent uncommons to build up when you're new to the game. And definitely let me know down in the comments if you've had some success building different ones. I always enjoy seeing what everybody else says in the comment section. If I missed something that should have been on here, let me know what you think for sure. And yeah, as always, thank you for watching. Have a good rest of your day. Peace.